everyone. Welcome to talk number 40. Today we have Pudi Ravi Krishna, more popularly we call him as Pudi, who passed out from IDC in the batch of VC 2004. Ravi currently is the director of design at Airmeet, which is a virtual events hosting platform. Prior to that, Ravi had worked for a startup called Capillary Tech, where he instituted some of the best design practices. And Ravi also comes with a lot more intense corporate experience in design, working for Microsoft, working for Intuit, where he actually had the opportunity to work with some of those cutting edge products out of India. Um, Ravi holds a degree in metallurgical engineering from Surathkal, then did his MDes. And also, very interestingly, Ravi had pursued a short course on folklore and intangible cultural heritage from Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, New Delhi. This talk is nothing to do with design, UX design, or about the work that he does in Airmeet, which we certainly would love him to talk sometime. This talk is about something which is very passionate about, or a kind of discovery that we made uh, with his whole consciousness that he built, understanding the life of the tribes in a locality where he actually grew up. So he had during the pandemic kind of went back in time and searched his own upbringing and background and kind of triggered a series of thoughts in him, looks like, and pursued those thoughts little more aggressively and converted into his own personal exploration of understanding, sensitizing, and through that creating some kind of attitude for himself. So I thought, as a designer, this kind of exposure that he has built is something be very interesting for all of us to listen to. And also the fact that he had done this talk a couple of times in different forums, so that also gives this topic a lot of significance. So he calls it a tribal concern, and what he learned from the indigenous communities of Odisha. I mean, that's the area that he will talk about where he grew up, and he has seen the changes that's happening, and also kind of understood the socio-political, economic impacts that the changes that has been going on has had on this tribal. So, without much ado, I should hand over the session to Ravi. Ravi, it's all.
Okay, thanks, Ravi. So I'll just go ahead. Thanks for inviting me to this talk. So this deck was created about 2 years ago, I would say. Briefly to introduce myself, my parents are from Andhra Pradesh. So my father was a public sector employee at Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. So one of the factories was located in this deep tribal area called Koraput district. Our town was well planned. It had all the facilities. It was named Sunabeda. So somewhere around the 70s, my parents had moved from Andhra to this place. So throughout the 80s, I have very wonderful memories, recollections of growing up in this pristine environment where we had river streams and we had hills all around us. And there was this tribal communities who were living on the outskirts of the township, but every now and then for the weekly market, they would come to sell their produce. So I had the best childhood I could ask for. I had done my engineering in metallurgy between 95 and 99. I dabbled in software for 3 years before discovering my love for trying to find a stream where the things that I enjoy I would do. So between 2002 to 2022, it's 2 decades in design. But this talk is less about that. Somewhere in March, when the lockdown was imposed, I was stuck in my native village in West Godavari district. I had come down for some family function, and overnight I had to hire a cab, just move back to my sister's place in Rajamundry. So the next 1 2 months were very trying and testing, because you couldn't move out of the house, and it was very suffocating, and mentally also it was very challenging. But it gave some time to delve or revisit or think to a lot of things which our daily routine doesn't allow us to do. So I was reminiscing my early childhood, reading Enid Blyton novels, watching the telecast of the same on Delhi Doordarshan, reading comics. So I went back to doing what I always used to love. So I started to draw the hills and other things using the very basic watercolors that I could get from the local shop. So these are actual photographs of the place where I grew up. So our township had these jacaranda trees which would bloom purple and almost cover up the road with the flowers. And all of my childhood was about climbing trees and plucking on the fruits that were free for anybody who could climb. So one of my earliest drawings from childhood was about a tribal who would bring in coal to sell in our township, and uh, after that I would never see him. But then I tried drawing a visual story, trying to depict the same. Basically, this was about me just finding something to uh, uh, talk about from my childhood, what I observed and all. But this got me thinking about what really happened to those tribes who were there around us. Did their lot improve? Did they benefit from the township which was set up there? So, in trying to learn who were the tribes who I grew up with, I started to dig more deeper, trying to find exactly who they were. And that's when I discovered that there were around 62 tribes in Odisha itself. So, and all across India, there are multiple different tribes and sub tribes. So I started to dig more and trying to understand them better. So predominantly, tribals are nature worshippers. All of the natural elements are their gods. So you would have the earth goddess, the water goddess, the stream, or the mountain gods. So they have a groove close to their settlement, where most of the trees that they worship are planted, and this could include medicinal plants as well. So there is no deity as such, maybe at an abstracted form as a stone or something, but the forest is predominantly their source of or protector, or the god that they would worship. So there, I was getting trying to understand their socio-economic situation as well. So they're predominantly cultivators, collectors. So I do know that they collect these siali leaves, stitch them up as leaf plates, which are then sold off to the local market, where these are distributed across the country. So most of their basic needs and necessities are met by the forest itself. And in exchange for this produce, they would probably trade it for some other items that they would need, like an umbrella or some very urgent things that they would need. So this was one craft that I saw was being practiced by in this part of Odisha, which is Dhan Murti, which is about paddy art. So each husk or each grain of unthrashed paddy is woven with a thread on a thin bamboo strip and shaped into different forms. So these forms can take the shape of an elephant, or it could be in the shape of any of the popular gods and goddesses. So instinctively, I once the lockdown was lifted, then I instinctively went to the market and just purchased these siali leaves and the plates that they stitch them up with. And my intention was to just use natural material to create something out of it. So just using threads and the bamboo or broomstick, coconut broomsticks. So if you look at what all the harvest that they trade in, tendu leaves is another leaf that they pluck from the forest and use it. They would sell it off to this beedi manufacturers, who would then roll it up as a beedi and sell it in the wholesale market. So looking at the man counting the number of leaves that he has harvested, I equated that to money, because this is what sustains them across the year. So different forest produce across the year is what they would harvest and keep some for themselves and some things that they would trade in. So I sat down to cut each leaf in the shape of a 500 rupee note. My intention was to create 1 crore leaf bundles to put in a suitcase. Uh, the concept that I was trying to emulate was that somewhere in 92, 94, Narasimha Rao government had to withstand a no confidence motion, and there is one tribal leader who whose seat he was rumored to have purchased with 1 crore. So historically, if you look at how the political power of tribals was never looked at. So there were tribal leaders similar to Ambedkar was for the scheduled castes, but they never got much of voice. So this was I remember my dad asking me, how much would 1 crore be, and would it really fit into a suitcase? Even for that time, nobody could fathom even a lakh rupee, but because that was a very huge amount to talk about. So I named it Bahumulya, and I could not complete that 200 bundles as such, because it was very tedious process of cutting them one by one. Nevertheless, the next thing which I wanted to explore was basically me doing very serious art, but unfortunately, the things which I dreamt of were very banal. This was cherry cheese pineapple, which came in my dream, and I was a little disappointed at first. Then I said, okay, nonetheless, if it has come, I might just explore it. So I just took broomsticks, created the basic shapes. I learned to understand the broom material. On the thinner side, it's more malleable. It bends easily into a curve. But on thicker side, it's very rigid. It should be used more for where I need strength. So this was the first thing I made, and that large stem was of a coconut leaf stem, which I did not shape much. I just polished it a little bit, and this is how it ended up. I was. It's not very refined. If you can see, some of the broomsticks are protruding out. But I learned to patiently stitch these leaves with the grass and be able to cover this. Even the next concept was about going back to my childhood, where we would have played lemon and spoon. So I had come to terms with the thing that this is less, not very intellectual, and but it's very playful and enjoyable. So did not think put much thought into it. I just kept making whatever came to my mind and which appealed to me. So by now I had become an adept at creating these shapes the way I wanted it, with the broomsticks, just tying them with threads. I had to wait a while for that big leaf to fall from our coconut tree in Rajahmundry, for that handle of the spoon. So once I had that, a lot of time was spent getting the right angle to photograph it. So this is how it ended up, and I loved the abstraction because of the uh, imperfect nature of the overall material, as well as the final output that it generated. So the more I read, discovering more about tribal women, their stature in society, they have equal stature with men, and they have a right to choose who they would want to be with, and who they would want to marry. So historically also, they are exploited, and uh, if you observe their jewelry, I remember that when growing up, when passing through, while traveling to Vishakhapatnam, I would see them wear necklaces made of just aluminum coins, which are 5 paise and 10 paise coins. So I would always be amazed at that. So most of their jewelry will be inexpensive material like aluminum. So I wanted to create this uh, 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 kadi or leg bracelet. So I created this shape. I didn't intend it to be so huge, but it ended up this way. And I tried experimenting, folding the leaves to create some patterns which should be like trying to detail the designs as well. But it started to look like a flower basket, so I abandoned it. So this was the final shape that I arrived at. This again, each person who saw it interpreted it in their own way. Some said it's a alien spacecraft. Somebody interpreted it in a different way. So for me, this was starting to become very enjoyable, because even I don't know what shape I would arrive at. I always try to create the perfect shape, but after covering it with the leaves, it ends up as something completely different. And each leaf has its own color and gradation. So there is a level of abstraction also that comes in. So I named it Vanaja's anklet. So Vanaja is the daughter of the forest, in folklore. So having done this, I started to look at more of like the more you read, the more you come across a history of exploitation of the tribes. So there is a book or a novel written by a Odia writer called Poraja. There he describes about the plight of tribal who's caught exploited by the landlords and the police. I remember while traveling from my hometown, Sunabeda, to Vishakhapatnam, I would always spot the tribes like plowing the hillside. It never occurred to me as a child what is the source of livelihood, or I didn't get much deep into that. Nor as part of my education did I try to do that. But the more I read about it, I was shocked to discover that Naxalism had taken root in the same region after I had left in 2000 for my studies and for my job. So the last I visited was in 2005, when my father had retired after 40 years of service. And they spoke about some kind of killings happening in the vicinity, and that was never there until 2000. So uh, between the Naxals and the security forces, there was this innocent tribals who were caught in the crossfire. And it is not uh, so there is a discourse on development which the government believes in, that natural resources need to be harvested to for aluminium and for iron, and hence the tribes need to be displaced from where traditionally their forefathers had resided, so that new factories or mining can happen. But there is a conflict, definitely a conflict, where the Maoists, who are self-anointed uh, protectors of these tribes, try to intervene. So while the security forces have this life jacket to protect them, so the tribes do not have those. So my instant reaction was to stitch together a jacket using the leaf. I was being sarcastic here, because the more I read about the Niyamgiri hills, which was a few kilometers away from our town, there was a tribal leader who was being intimidated, framed in with false cases, just to coerce them into giving up their land, so that the bauxite mining companies like POSCO, which is a Korean company, can come and start mining. So there is a reason why these tribes do not want to give up their land. This is how the need for energy has been increasing, and India wants to even mine the coal which is of low grade, just because they don't want to spend money procuring the coal from elsewhere. So the left is what I have always seen growing up. The red mud is bauxite. The right, what I am showing is like once a mine, a open cast mine is opened up, the extent of the ugliness that it shows up is what I wanted to show. So there is no clear on one side you say that we are going clean energy, we are harvesting solar, but the data indicates that we are still dependent on low grade coal, and forests which have always been regarded as non-touchable. In the past 8 to 10 years, the new government has been changing the rules to open up even these mines. So I instinctively, my reaction was that to equate the coal with the thermal factories which convert the coal to electricity, was to equate it with the story of Bhashmasura. So Bhashmasura was given the powers by Shiva, that anyone who he places his hand on would turn into ash. So I made this headgear, which is resembling the headgear that tribals use to for their rituals, using the horns of a buffalo or a wild buffalo. and shaped it in the form of this thermal reactor. It was not scary enough. I just had to add a few coal at the top to uh, uh, bring out the ugliness to the shape. But essentially, my thing was that all of us are privy to this exploitation and destruction of the forest because of our high demand for energy. We are the people who are driving the uh, uh, like indirectly affecting the exploitation of the forests, and hence contributing to the displacement of the tribes as well. This specific tribe is Dongria Kon tribe. They were also very close to where I grew up. So the Dongria Kons are custodians of streams. So they worship the mountains. There is a if you look at the shawls and the weave, you can see that there is a mountain and there is a river in it. So this is their trademark or distinct stamp. Even on the walls of their huts, they paint the triangles, which is representative of the mountains. So there is a quality of bauxite ore that it is very soft and it soaks up water. And this huge hill is the one which soaks up the entire water and then releases the water slowly across the year. So the stream tends to be evergreen and flows all through the year, and the tribals understand this. So the moment you harvest this bauxite ore and reduce the hill to plateau, there is no way you can have access to a year of perennial water. So the question would remain that in the summer months, what would you drink? So anyone who has even sipped water from a stream would know the sweetness of it. So I made this shape, which was more of a head questioning where would the water come from. So more than getting excited about the expression or the art of it, I was enjoying the making of it. And there was a lot of diligence. And if you look at the shape, I try to make it very perfect, but the material, which is the broomsticks, tend to bend, and there is an abstraction which creeps in automatically. So subsequent governments did try to empower the tribal communities since the British itself. So there have been revolts from 1818 onwards, and before 1857, around 1855 also, there was a tribal revolt against the British. So this led to a lot of acts being passed, but in reality, maybe that empowerment never happened. As India liberalized, the pressure would have increased furthermore, which was the cause of the Naxal movement between 2000 to 2010. So around 2006 is when the Forest Rights Act was passed, which enabled tribals to go collect whatever forest produce they would need. There would be restrictions in terms of not being able to cut the trees, but they could still go and collect wood, fallen wood for their needs. But if the subsequent governments in 2016 passed another law talking about compensatory afforestation fund, which basically means that the government can go ahead and uh, 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 take up a forest land, but in return for that, they would promise to plant trees elsewhere as compensation, which is not necessarily equivalent to a forest. It is more like a plantation. So if you look at the historically also, the township which we grew up in did cause a displacement of people who were there. And historically also, all the mega dam projects which were meant to harvest electricity from by damming rivers also caused submergence of forest land and led to the displacement of the tribes. So this photographs at the bottom are about like how that small patch of land has been left aside, because that is the sacred grove. So effectively the tribes have been moved out, their land has been dug up, and only the sacred grove has been left for the moment. And the compensatory housing that has been allocated to them is basically small rooms which don't even have windows. So this is like a window painted by the people with leaves, reminiscing probably the uh, outside. So I felt that this was like again a repetition of the story of Ekalavya, where the sacrifice has to be given by the tribe for the betterment of the civilized, so-called civilized world. So again, here the shape is not something which I wanted to make it this big, but unfortunately it ended up this big because it had a lot of detail to it. This is what was created by, like I named it as Eklavya Likes Your Development, where the thumb is cut off. So for me, this was a real eye-opener. There is this favorite quote I heard from one of the professors from his talk. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscape, but in having new eyes. So for me, it was less about what great art I created, but the ability to for having being able to see while I grew up, and while I always am closer to nature, but being able to see it more well and being able to communicate the same to others, that if you look at these photographs, you will see that the animals have more compassion than us, and we are no different from the animals around us. So in sum, I would say that I came across this coin in 1985, which talks about forestry for development, and only 7 years later the definition of development changed to something else. So that's where I would like to end my talk. Any questions, Ravi?
Great, Ravi. Thank you so much. I know some parts of it are really disturbing, no doubt. It's causing real concern, and I think we're able to, from your own experience and expression, kind of establish that and took us along for a few minutes into this world. Thank you so much. And I'm opening this forum for any questions. Please, those of you who have a question, you could press on the hand icon so that I kind of know who is.
Gokul has a question.
Yeah, hi.
Gokul, go ahead, Gokul.
Pudi, just out of curiosity, did you do VC or PD?
I did visual communication.
Oh, wow. Amazing hands-on skills with that. Such a, what you call, I would say, quote unquote, flimsy material. Amazing work. Extremely, what you call, it's been more of a self-prompted, self-exploration kind of a thing with a very, very unconventional material. And not only the base material is not a very sturdy one, the cladding with a leaf, that to multiple leaves. Amazing work. Very, very inspiring. I'm sure you really kind of enjoyed every moment of that.
Yeah.
Listening to you and seeing your visuals makes it as if I did it along with you. amazingly feel good to listen to you.
Thanks, Gokul.
Let
Actually,
more, yeah.
So actually, the leaf is quite reliable. So this was actually almost a month later. I left it. I didn't have any space for myself in my room, so I kept it outside, and it stayed that way. So
Wow.
for almost a month. So it's a very beautiful leaf, and it doesn't lose its color or the property of withstanding water for a very long time. It's not brittle like others.
What a discovery. In a world where everything is plastic.
Right.
Amazing.
Thank you, though.
Too good to have heard to you. All the best. May
Yeah.
more such explorations happen.
Yeah. Thanks.
Salute you.
Thanks, Gokul. Thank you so much. Anybody has a question?
Yeah. So there is someone with bridging gaps in India. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Ranjan Day, and I was actually invited to join this by Ratan. I was about to ask you, and I also work quite similarly like you. I'm from VC, but I also work with 3D structures. So I was identifying with what you were making and your thing. But what I really wanted to ask you is, where have you kind of showcased this work about your feeling for the tribals, and how many other people have seen this work other than these talks that you share with us? This, what you've shared with us, needs a much larger audience. People need to be aware of what's happening, because very few people actually know what's happening to our tribals and their lands.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. When I started off with this work, then I kept them, preserved them in my one small room in my sister's place, because I was not at my home. But after a period of time, I ran out of space. So I learned to keep it outside and not being too attached to my work. 5 years back, I did a similar explorations where I wanted to see if I would succeed as an artist. There, I was thinking about the financial aspect of it. But this was a liberating moment for me, I would say, where I learned that art has nothing to do with livelihood. It is a medium of expression, right? So, and you don't need anything. So whatever you need, nature provides you, and you can make art out of anything. And when you say that this has to go to a larger medium, yes. So the only thing was the restriction of that 2 years, which didn't let go of it. And yes, so when you say I am communicating this, there are other artists as well, prominent people who are very conscious about the medium that they use, and they do not use any manufactured material for their expression. And I agree with you that ideally I should, if I am promoting this, I should actively participate more. Yeah, I will do that.
That's great, I think. Thanks for that question. I think there's some...
Yeah, I too actually have been working in some of these areas. I've been to Sambalpur, which is North Odisha. Thankfully, that area has not yet been affected by any of this. It's still a very large tribal area.
Right.
And thankfully, it's not been affected like Koraput has been.
Yeah.
As well as this Andhra side.
Yeah.
But still, I think our tribal expressions and the kind of stuff that you're doing to make sure that
Yeah.
their point of view is heard.
Yeah.
It really needs to be, I think, brought to the urban areas, and you need to have a show in some, perhaps like some like prominent art galleries, or in some like public like fora, maybe even in Vizag, or in the, like Visakhapatnam, or even like Hyderabad, where they have art galleries, because people need to know this, and not many people actually know what's happening in our hinterland. So I'm as like concerned as you are, because I know what an amazing, like rich kind of like trouble like tribal like culture we have, and it's getting lost by this exploitation, which nobody knows about. You know.
Right.
Very good. I think we also have a person to collaborate, Ravi.
Yeah.
Any more questions? I have a
Yeah,
question.
I would love to like collaborate with you at some point. Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Just shoot me an email.
I have a question, Ravi, before somebody is preparing one. If you had to ask you, your tribal exploration, of course, has been there, but formally you did it during the COVID times, you said. So if you were to ask you the pre-tribal awareness, post-tribal, as a designer, what is the change that you're seeing in yourself?
So I would say, more than as a designer, as a consumer, I have become more conscious. So the things that I buy, who produces them, those are the things which I pay more attention to. So the kind of clothes that I buy, I'm more conscious that it is handloom, and you try to buy from a source which gives them maximum benefit. So today there are a lot of sources like iTokri and other things, other portals which sell craft goods, which go the money goes directly to the craftsman itself. So I am a conscious buyer of craft. I love craft, actually. So and even in terms of spend, I think all through the COVID period, I was just having two clothes with me. So a lot of this change, I would say, as a person, is what I have conscious. It came consciously that now when I buy something, also I am conscious whether I really need it, and if I have to buy it, is then an alternative, eco-friendly alternative for it. Those are the things you're careful about. And I think more as a designer, I love to be called an artist. So I think for me, this has been a troubling thing for a decade, that what do I need to become an artist? So I think between 5 years back, when I quit for my job for a year, to this 2002, when this was a liberating moment, where I am no longer carrying that grudge, that I'm not an artist. So now I feel very good about it when I call myself an artist. Yeah, Murli.
Hey, Pudi.
Thank you.
What for?
Pardon?
You thanked me before I even asked the question, Pudi. Hey, Pudi, we know each other quite well. I just wanted to ask you on the forum, do you think we should become more materialistic?
So that's why I was very conscious when I named the presentation itself, right? It was about learning from the indigenous communities of India. So their way of living is like the least carbon footprint. their consumption is like the most basic that you need. So this question is a philosophical one, that do we need to be materialistic? I think from Gandhi to all the saints we have had in India, all of them have said the same thing. So I would leave it to the individual that what are the 4 phases in life. Childhood, everybody has. Adulthood, post that, that decision is left to the individual. And I think as a natural thing, when you grow older is when you delve on these questions, and then make your choice that okay, you don't really need so much in your life. So
Okay. The
unfortunately,
reason why I asked you that question is, it's just that, see, after you have taken the Tendu leaves, right? So after you work with those leaves, you become so sensitive to material, right? When I said we all have to become materialistic, I meant that we all have to become sensitive.
So it's a good question.
Okay, so when we become sensitive, then we'll start understanding its consumption. Then we'll start understanding its value. That's what I meant.
So I think as children, all of them will be sensitive. So if more of children get that opportunity to work with these kind of material, then definitely it will help in sensitizing.
As always, I'm a big fan of your work, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Is it Shreyas who has raised his hand again? Your name shows up as bridging gaps in India. You can ask
but that's my non like registered NPO. I'm anti like establishment. I'm anti the way education is. So this is something that I work under, and I've been working under this label for the last like 20 years,
Sure.
all across India, including like tribal schools and like rural schools, and where I exactly work the way that you are working, where I don't take any tools with me, I don't take anything with me. I go and find what like material is there, and with like whatever like material is there, I teach them so that they don't have. I'm actually trying to come up with something called like no excuse education, where they can't say they came in with a bag, they brought in some tools, and they went away with the bag. So now we can't do those things. So then I just tell them we have all the things around us, but you don't yet know how to use it to your advantage. So instead of doing it as an art, I show them geometry, I show them packaging, I show them all kinds of things which they don't know that they can do with what they have. So that's my approach. It's not artistic purely, it's slightly perhaps like designer, but it's into education, it's into learning. Yeah, that's what I do. And that's why perhaps like bridging gaps, which is what I'm doing. Yeah. Okay.
Great. Ravi dropped off, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's having a problem with the connection.
Okay.
So, yeah, but one question, Ravi. What are your then any future plans? I know art is an expression, and you will um, continue to do both your art and your work, which which earns you your livelihood. But any concrete plans going ahead?
Yeah, so I think getting out of COVID itself was a big thing. So one was like I lost my job, and that too was very liberating, I would say.
Mhm.
Uh, for 6 months, I could afford to not be at work. But I think like I have a son who is now in class 10, so I have to be responsible. So yeah, so definitely like mm, uh, in the past 1.5 years, I've been working with a startup. It's very intense, but over the weekends I do take time off. But talking about like I didn't go back to art again. So I have anxiety issues, I would say, like to make a confession, because 5 years back I went through the very bad phase when I seemed lost and all that. So at times I am conscious that I don't want to get into too much of an intellectual kind of an exploration. But yes, so I have my views whether art should be a natural expression. Again, trying to be an activist, that I am not um, in favor of. I would say. Uh, I think when you try to get into activism, and uh, uh, that tends to create a different form of expression. I would rather retain the innocence. Is something I feel that art should retain. And in these works, I think that Lemon and Spoon was the more innocent one, and devoid of trying to say anything. I think I feel that art need not be so intellectualized.
Sure, sure. So you're saying art for art's sake is good.
Yes, I feel that way. I mean, I have been through these phases. 10 years back, I used to draw cartoons, and even there, I wanted to explore humor. But in India, political cartooning has too much weightage. So even like I don't want to comment on other cartoonists. Their work is really good, but art for like cartoons for humor's sake is more enjoyable, I would say. But the political cartoons, I think the serious cartoonist approaches his work like a genuine artist, in the sense that political cartoonist believes that his cartoons have to say a message, and I really appreciate their ability to do that. For a very serious topic also, they are able to craft humor around a very serious topic. So I do appreciate them, but when I try to get them, I do a similar kind of humor. I used to get angry. So uh, each person, I think he should approach his trade or what he's trying to do in his own way.
Right, right. So even my own, explorations, small explorations in this field,
Uh,
uh, I believe that doing art and especially abstract art, so to say,
uh,
is more a communication with your own self.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not trying to communicate to others, but the whole process of doing it, enjoying it, is what matters. And I think if we can all draw inspiration from that and uh, kind of let go of something
mm,
like what is the meaning of this and all, but let go and start doing things, I think that would be phenomenal if we all can do it at some level.
yeah.
Okay, I think we are almost at the end of the talk, and our moderator has joined in, Ravi Krishnan. So Ravi, over to you.
Yeah, sorry. There was a serious connection. I was trying desperately try to get him back. I'm sure that I mean it's a very different session, very different from the session that we have had before. Thanks, Ravi. Thanks for sensitizing us into an area that needs a lot more discovery as designers. I mean, this not just as designers, but as conscious citizens of this world. I think we should be very aware of many of those choices we take. And there are two sides to it. One is the choice that you make as a consumer, and also choice that you make in terms of creating something for which others consume. So I think deep down, this actually just a bit of thinking of the conscience. Thank you so much for doing this. And first of all, I should thank all the participants of the event today, without which such events are not possible. And of course, our speaker, Pudi, for taking his time off to do this despite his busy schedule. And I do thank my fellow volunteers and also the Raj Kumar Menon and Kapillary Tech who take care of the YouTube channel. This session, I'm hoping that I would have lost any bit despite my disconnection. I think it should come off smooth and clean. So we will upload this video tomorrow for those who missed out. And with this, I'd like to thank everybody. Wish good night and see you soon next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I'm stopping the recording now. Great. Thanks, Ravi.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye.